Hello there. It's Clark here. I have just wrapped up the ToC show session with Len Morris from Stair Supplies and View Rail all the way over in Indiana in the US. Look, it was a fascinating session. I think you really should watch it. You'll get a sense of how ToC can be used in the real world, the real modern world. They've got just a lovely mix of. I'm just going to show you this a sales funnel, kind of, like we all know about nowadays from the digital world, where a lot of the stuff that goes on in the sales funnel is people either working with other people, especially with customers, trying to figure out what the customer wants and what they can do, and manufacturing. They've got 400 people working in the company. It's grown. It's like one of those overnight success stories that's grown over the last 20 years or so, and it's just fascinating. Len and his team have applied ToC very, very, very pragmatically, and they keep learning and learning and learning and growing and growing and growing. And it's just such an interesting story. I just wanted to give you a little heads up, though, before you watch all the good stuff. There are a couple of little bits in the chat where the internet connection just goes a little bit funny, and it just suddenly slows down like this. If you keep listening, just concentrate a little bit in those bits. You'll get the essence of what's going on there. Please don't give up, just because it goes a little wonky in a few places. There's just so much to learn from this. It's just a really inspiring, lovely, clever story. 400 people now working in this company, and they're thriving, and they're all paying their mortgages and so on, because of the great job that Len and his team have done. And just a part of that is ToC, but it's a really important part. So yeah, enjoy, please. And in a moment, we'll switch over to the recording. Bye.
Let's go.
Excellent. Right. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the ToC show. Really cool to see so many smiling faces there in the background. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here in New Zealand. And I have on the other side of the screen there, Len Morris, who's from Indiana in the US. And I think it's 3 o'clock. Is that right, Len?
It is.
Excellent.
Yes, 3 o'clock.
Excellent. So good news for everyone. It's the 12th of August here in New Zealand. It's the 11th of August in Indiana. And it's my birthday on the 11th of August. So I got this big, long, extended birthday thing going on. That Len is the only reason we're doing this, to be honest. Right. Now, Len, let me just give you guys here. I'm going to pop it in the chat. Just so you can all just take a look, and it might help to just browse around this if you're able. Len is the founder of two kind of very successful ToC-based companies, and could you just tell us a little bit about them now? Maybe, Len, just tell us a little bit about your story, then I'll interrupt every so often and go, wow.
Sure, Clark. As we launch, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And glad to be able to share that with you.
Excellent.
So View Rail and Stair Supplies, our mission is to manufacture and sell premium stair products direct to builders and homeowners. And so we made the decision a long time ago to be a company that's a manufacturer, and we're selling direct. We don't have dealers, and our main platform is our web presence, where people are coming to our website, figuring out, oh, I really like that look. And they fill out a contact form, call in, talk to one of our specialists, and then we help them design a stairway. So you can imagine in the early days when it's just kind of like me and my wife and like our kids who are 5 and 6 years old as employees. And we would go to Thanksgiving dinner, and I married the baby of the family. And so the family's asking me, so, what are you doing with our little sister here? Well, I'm selling stair parts on the internet. And it didn't always go over that well at Thanksgiving dinner of our career choice was going to be. But in the end, we've put together a pretty nice little thing, and we're doing a pretty good job of servicing our customers and being able to leverage a lot of technology to be able to bring them a stair parts design. And it's forced us into some different thinking. When we can't be on site to do measurements, we have to think a little differently. And as we think about constraints, sometimes a constraint can be customer information, and so we've had to figure out how to apply focusing steps to that constraint to growing our business.
Cool.
Today we're
How many?
go ahead, Clark.
Yeah, so is there kind of like a 5-year time frame, sort of suddenly where your graph of number of employees and all that kind of stuff? What's the time frame where it suddenly took off?
Yeah, so we're about 20 years ago, I launched into solo entrepreneurship. And so we're kind of in our 20th anniversary of my solo entrepreneurship. And it was kind of an up and down, fits and starts, more fits than starts. And I think we're probably in the current business incorporated around 2003. Right. And we muddled along as what I would call a Me Too business. We were just making things that everybody else made and doing it using the kind of the same part numbers as everybody else. And we were trying to compete on not great platforms. We would compete on price. We tried to compete on offering different wood finishes or different wood styles. But then it was really, I'm going to say around 2014, 2015, we decided we need to figure out our own thing, and we need to do something different. Right. And that's when we launched the ViewRail brand, and we started launching a railing system. And we decided to take our interior stair parts background and apply it to a railing system with cable railing and rod railing. And we thought, let's take the level of finish up a notch. Let's take the interior level of finish and let's apply it outdoors. And pretty quickly we figured out we were on to what the market wanted. And I would say in around by 2015, we were maybe 35 employees, 40 employees. Right. And right now we're hovering just under 400. So wow. Been a pretty steep incline since 2015.
Yeah, I bet. And you've got to be careful there. You suffer altitude sickness if you climb that high. I'm just going to share here just your website. Just quickly, just so that people can just, especially when they're watching the recording, they can kind of get a look. This is your Stair Supplies website, and correct. Your product is really nice. I showed this to my wife and then regretted it, and then I realized you don't ship to New Zealand, so and that we actually don't have 2 levels in our house. You got,
well, give me your phone number. I'm sure we can find something she wants to buy.
Yeah, you got a beautiful product and you sell it on the internet. So can I ask you this? Because this is the bit that really, it kind of flummoxed me when we first chatted. Because I'm just remembering when people started selling shoes on the internet. And I thought, I'm never going to buy a pair of shoes on the internet. Don't be ridiculous. How could you possibly buy shoes on the internet? And you're selling quite customizable, really upmarket, high quality stairs and other stuff. How on earth do you sell that on the internet?
So one of the things we figured out, Clark, is we had to understand how to build some adjustability into all of our designs. And so we had to build some ways that we could get pretty good measurements, but they don't have to be deadly perfect measurements. And so that we're able to then put in some software and come up with a design that we could illustrate to the customer. And then we're able to sell them the components that will go together and have a beautiful finished look, but maintain some adjustability.
Right. So it's kind of you customize around the edges, but the fundamentals are pretty solid and very flexible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we've built. I know you work a lot extensively with people in the software world, and we've gathered some pretty talented minds who have written a lot of code inside of CAD softwares to be able to do 3D modeling of all of what we're presenting to the customer, and then kick that out to the shop floor and be able to manufacture it quickly.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's really cool. So you've gone from 40 people, which is your if I divide the world into get work, selling, marketing, all of that kind of good stuff, and do the work, which is the creation of it, the making of it. So you've got what would be the split roughly between those two worlds in terms of like your employees numbers?
Yeah, it is about half and half, Clark.
Right.
Um, yeah, between the get work and do work, and then there's quite a big chunk in the middle that's the admin side of
Right.
managing legal, compliance, HR, accounting, all of that segment as well. But we're pretty. It takes us as much time, Clark, to figure out what your wife wants to buy as what it does for us to manufacture it. And so we spend as much time interacting with the client as we do actually on the manufacturing floor.
Ah, that's interesting. Right. So and that's where the mistakes could be made, which could be expensive and frustrating for everyone. But that's probably where the quality is the most difficult and most important to manage in that middle segment.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of back and forth. People are coming to us if they are a builder. They're building a house that's well north of 1 million US, and they have a pretty discerning client. It's usually a custom home, and so they're going to be back and forth on the finishes several times. And so we have a lot of discussion back and forth of how do we want this finished, and getting those final designs and making sure that we get a sign off on the final designs is a really key piece of what we have to do.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. I'm just going to grab a prop. I have it hidden. I'll be back in a second. All right. There we go. So this might be. You guys have a funnel, and
Yeah.
for me, this is kind of old. My view of a business like yours. I don't work with manufacturing stuff, but I've and I've been in two factories and worked with them in my life. So my view is you've got a factory, you've got a sales and marketing department, and they're kind of almost separate. But really, the view that you guys have, because you're combining this digital marketing sales front end, and then I know you call it admin, but it's and I know there's a whole lot of stuff in the admin, but there's the actual, this is where the sales happen, isn't it? In the admin bit, and all of the getting stuff right, and then you got
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
manufacturing. So you kind of got like a sales funnel where at the top stuff comes in, your stuff happens in the middle, and then this last little bit here, around about here, is where you actually make stuff. And then at the bottom, somehow you got to get this stuff out to your customers, and yet they're all around the US. How does that work?
You know, Clark, amazing questions, and there's so much in there. And we have 8 different buildings in which we're manufacturing the different components.
Mhm.
And so, as the data is coming in from the sales people, we have to do a really good job of doing database admin and then sending that data out to the 8 different plants to manufacture it. It all then comes to one plant where it gets brought together,
Right.
and then we're putting on a truck and shipping it.
Yep.
And up until about a year ago, that shipping was quite easy, and we would put it on a truck with a freight company, and they would deliver it, and things went quite well. There's this little company you may have run into them once or twice in the U.S. company called Amazon,
Heard of them?
and yeah, they seem to be gobbling up all of the shipping space and everything from an airplane to a small truck. And so we have had to start our own shipping company.
No way.
And so yeah, we
Wow.
now have a fleet of our own trucks on the road doing delivery just because we had so much pain of being able to get our products
So,
that final mile to the customer.
so it's that last bit and the very last mile of it, that last little tiny bit there is like in
Yeah,
everything, is the hardest, probably the hardest bit.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting. You say
I,
that.
we're going to be a lot better for it. Our drivers will bring the product, we'll take it into the customer, give the customer the paperwork and the instruction manual, and leaf through it, spend a few minutes and say, do you have any questions or anything we can help you with? And that personal touch, I think that adversity that we felt, I think we're turning into something that's going to be pretty fantastic for the market.
Actually, that's lovely. So you take a negative and then you don't just replace it. You actually look, how do we actually make it better? How do we actually
Yeah.
turn it into an advantage? Oh, I like that. Okay, that's really really cool. So when we were talking last, I remember she had a picture of a funnel, a fairly sophisticated funnel that was on the wall behind you.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit, without giving away too many secrets, could you tell us why on earth did you have a picture of a funnel on the wall behind you, Len?
Well, I started reading Goldratt back in the very early days, and so we would talk and talk and talk about constraints, and we would write papers and send emails and have all these discussions. And I realized a few years ago we really need to turn it into something visual that everyone can see. And so we had hourglasses sitting on conference room tables and hourglasses sitting around and talking about constraints. But until we really applied it and to us and did a drawing of
Yes.
and applied here's a visualization of what flow looks like of a customer coming in, where is the constraint in the organization, get everyone to agree that the constraint is at that place,
Yes.
and now let's apply the focusing steps on that and make sure we're achieving the goal of making more money both now and in the future.
Yep.
And it has been enormously helpful for me and for everyone to have this one visual picture of what our constraint and what our flows are, and it also helps us know what is not a constraint.
Yeah.
Great that you want to improve that thing over there, but improving that thing that is not in the critical path isn't going to make us more money. So why are we doing it?
I really like that. So there's two bits I particularly like about that. One is that I have a small business, and I'm sort of doing the marketing stuff, and I'm trying to read about funnels and things, and it never occurred to me because in my world the delivery, the make stuff is me delivering stuff face to face or recording things or writing things, but it never occurred to me that the model for manufacturing these days could be a funnel, and just one of the stages of the funnel was actually the making, and it's an important bit, but that's really cool. What I loved about when I saw that funnel on the wall is the idea. When we talk about ToC, we talk about it being systems thinking, but what you really had there is systems seeing. You could actually see the whole
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
system, and suddenly you could manage it. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now, so I'm just playing this back. So you're an overnight success that's taken 20 years, and in the last 5 years, it seems to be a
Yeah.
theme actually. Ian Larson, who was on the ToC show about a month ago, had the same thing. They had that same kind of slow warm up, and then suddenly that they grew. Uh, Now, when he talked about it, he framed it in terms of they learned ToC kind of early on, and then that kind of took them there, and then they realized, oh, there's a new constraint. We're
Mm.
actually limited by something else, and it's not what we were limited by before. And then there was a graph. Suddenly they'd overcome that constraint, and then they'd suddenly shoot up, and then shoot up, and then shoot up, and they'd grow that way. Did you guys? I presume you've had a similar kind of history. Could you kind of see if you could play that back, if it's not too much of a garbled question?
Yeah, you're going to test my memory banks. So, but you're exactly right. It is a jagged edge as we come up to what a constraint is, and then work through it. And that constraint has been our sales department at times. We have literally had more phone calls than what we had people to answer the phone.
Wow.
And that gets really painful. So, customers are hitting me up on Facebook. Hey, your people aren't calling me back. Why isn't anybody calling me back? And I'm like, I want to say I'm sorry, but I can't hire and train them fast enough. Customers don't really want to hear the real answer, but that is the real answer is I don't have enough qualified people yet. And so we got very intentional to solve that constraint of getting training programs, and we would bring in batches of salespeople, and about 15 to 20 at a time, and put them through a sales training process to where they could matriculate out of that sales training process and have knowledge and be able to be successful. Other times, it's always policy. It's never real hard things that we run out of real estate. It's policy that keeps us from growing. And we had some policies around what our willingness was to invest in capital equipment. And so we hit some limitations of, we have these 8 different plants. Well, one of the plants was constraining the others, and we were unwilling for a while to put the capital into fixing it. And finally, we fixed some of those policies and some of our fears and made the investment. And we now operate in the manufacturing side with a plan of, we figure out what is peak sales capacity for a 5-day period. A lot of math here. I'll try to go a little bit slow. Peak sales capacity for a 5-day period. And then we want 20% more than that, because Murphy's real, and he shows up in our shop at the worst time. So we have to have 20% more manufacturing capacity than what peak is. And that has been a very successful policy for us to get in place and live by that policy, rather than averages are terrible in manufacturing. The worst thing to do is to look at an average. And we have to look at a peak, and we have to plan for peaks. And it was a bad policy when we were planning for averages. And I don't know why it took us 20 years to figure it out, but at one point we had to figure out, we have to plan for our peaks, not for our averages.
Right. Okay.
And so those have been some of those glass ceilings of those constraints that we busted through. For the long time, our customer acquisition was really centered around Google AdWords, and we didn't thoroughly understand social media and print and some of the other pieces. And I'm not sure anybody totally understands social media yet. It's Google AdWords is so beautiful. I know exactly what my return is whenever I give them money, and nothing else is quite as clean as pay-per-click for our business model anyway. I talk to other people, and they're completely social media driven. We grew up on pay-per-click, and we've busted into some constraints there when we limited ourselves to only thinking pay-per-click. Yeah, those are a few.
Okay, that's really cool. That's interesting. I am intrigued by the idea of the averages, and that is one of those things you keep coming up against. So can I just dig in? I think something there.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the 5-day kind of peak ahead of you, and you're selling on the internet largely, if not exclusively, then you can ramp up your sales or wind them down a little bit according to your order book and your manufacturing capacity. Probably quite easy, or does the time frame make that tricky? Is it?
Well, I love you, Clark, and I'm going to poke at you as a guy who's been in two manufacturing buildings. It's much more challenging that for us, because to increase our capacity is often more about machines, and so we are, in order to effectively change our capacity, we have to be about 6 months ahead of it.
Right.
And so we go to the sales and marketing team and we say, okay, we have to take a look at what are our targets for next year, pull out your crystal balls and say, what are we going to do for April of 2022? Because we need to start planning for that from a capacity standpoint right now in manufacturing. Now, when we get a little bit closer to it and we are able to do things with sales and promotions.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than kind of changing the paper or spend on pay-per-click, we're more often to use a change in a sales or promotion, because we often find that increasing pay-per-click may give us a lead right now, but the person doesn't want that stairway for another 4 months.
Right.
And so that doesn't help us as much as saying, hey, buy now on these products that we can deliver quickly. And so we'll put a sale or a promotion on a product line that we have extra capacity in.
And from your point of view, there's no right price.
No, there isn't.
You can mix it up according to what you want to do. If demand is a little bit low, you've got the capacity there. You've paid for all of that capacity. You know your cost of your raw materials. You've got the lead in there. So I imagine you probably have quite a lot of wiggle room according to whatever you actually want to do.
Yeah, in general, we spend more on marketing and sales than what we do on raw material.
Wow.
And so if we have paid to acquire that customer, if we've paid to get them on our website, we need to really figure out how to convert them into a customer, because that's where most of our cost is at.
Okay, that's really interesting, because again, that's that whole picture, all and working as one holistic business. Okay, cool. Do you mind if we'll just now sort of segue a little bit and tell me about ToC in your company? I know it's in your head. Tell me more about that.
Clark, it's now my turn to brag on you quite a bit here. I have a bit of an academic background, and I enjoy ideas and concepts, and I love to live in the abstract. And so Goldratt is an incredible hero, right? So he's a fantastic person in the abstract. And so I worked really hard to get the cookies on the bottom shelf, and I tried to figure out how to do a lot of training and a lot of teaching on it. And in the last few years, as we have come into your materials, it's been fantastic for us to get a much broader adoption of ToC, and it's really wide throughout our culture. And it's not a day, not even an hour that probably goes by that someone doesn't use the word constraint, whether it's whether it's a manager or someone in product development or someone in sales, because they understand that we really got to know where our constraint is and what are we working on to apply the focusing steps.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is there anything? So ToC is just one thing. I mean, it's not the only. You know, it's a important part to being successful, but it's not the only part of your business. If you took ToC out of it, what's the next most important bit for you? That maybe in terms of mindset and thinking or tools.
2 3-letter words. Or 3-letter items that we use as our management background. ToC and then OKRs. Objectives and key results, famously known by this other small, pretty international company. I think they made it to New Zealand, called Google. They use the objectives and key results as one of their. Yeah, you're familiar with them?
Yes. They're pretty cool. I've heard of Google and heard of OKRs.
Yeah, so
OKRs too. Oh, we
Yeah.
breaking
So
up just a sec there.
we use apologize. Yeah, there's a thunderstorm overhead here, and it's probably messing with the internet. Some of these words here. But OKRs, objectives, and key results, we run on about a 6-week cadence
Okay.
on those, where we're setting new objectives and key results to bring company tactical pieces that are in play. And ToC is always the overwhelming strategy that is kind of sitting over the top of everything we do.
Okay, cool. So you got the overarching strategy. Where do we focus with the ToC? How do we manage? When
Yes.
we were focusing, and then a layer below that, you've decided what you're going to measure, what's important to measure, what's important not to measure, and then you measure them and you track them,
Yeah.
and you use those to manage. Okay, yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
just
We're pretty passionate about knowing our numbers and having numbers in front of everyone as we think about ToC, kind of back to Goldred's teaching on what's the goal of a business. The goal is make money now and in the future. And if we're going to do that, we're going to share the numbers of the money with people. And so we're abundantly clear of sharing all those numbers with every person in every plant every day.
yes, yeah, okay, that makes really good sense because again, it's another way of seeing your system, and you can't see it if you ain't got the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. I'm just going to pop over to the chat now, and we've got about 20 minutes left here. Are there any questions from anyone want to pop a question in for Len? And someone please say yes, that'll be cool, because otherwise I'll look like an idiot. Maybe I already do look like an idiot. Okay, Rodney has asked a very good question. How do you teach your people about ToC?
So we're probably not very good at it, but we have been we're really trying. And so we hold what we call a book club. And so if you're a manager, you get to be a part of a book club where you're with maybe 5 other managers and then one of our senior leaders, and we'll just read one of Clark's books together, or we'll read the goal together, and then we get together once a week and we talk about it. And with the mission, and when we come out of there, is to understand what is the constraint of the business. And this may be purist, but we decided each plant has a constraint within the plant. And because it's just too hard for a plant that is manufacturing glass to comprehend that the overall constraint is in the marketing department, which is where it's at right now. Yeah. And so we need to apply a constraint to each local plant, and then we do teaching around that. We made up these flags, or the constraint flags, and every plant gets a constraint flag, and they fly their flag over the machine that is the constraint, so that everyone in the building knows where the constraint's at.
I love that. That's good. So I'm just going to bounce off that a little bit. So I'm hearing 2 things. One thing is that you get knowledge.
Sure.
You get knowledge in their heads.
Yeah.
So like you could use that. You could use any one of those copies of the goal and read those. But I think what I found, and I imagine it's why you're meeting and talking about it, is that getting ideas in people's head. There's quite a gap between actually getting the knowledge and actually applying it and understanding it in the real world. So is that a problem, or is that why you have the constant discussions to try and make sure that everyone is on the same page?
Yeah. So ToC and constraint thinking isn't natural.
No.
It's much more natural to think we got to build large batches. We need to. I do my part, and I just shove this pile over to the next guy, and that's his problem. And I just need to take care of my own. And ToC really boss up a lot of that. And so over with, we have to keep coming back to those things, and we have to okay, let's read and let's think about ToC from another angle and have a refresher on that.
Okay, yeah, that makes
and let's do that again. And
so there's another bit there I think people might find interesting is if you look at this, that gives a big overview, but the way you've described it, and I think this is the picture I remember seeing, on the wall behind you, that your overall system is that in here there's actually several different independent plants making components, and then they join up. So you manage the constraint in each of those, and that allows them to be decoupled from the rest of the process, but also work as part of a whole process.
Exactly, Clark. And it's so funny that we're talking about those plants as an individual constraint, and so we have a throttle that we show on that, and so how we can throttle to be able to maximize that constraint, and then they all dump into shipping. And I can remember so many times the last 3 to 5 years saying, no matter what happens, shipping cannot be the constraint. The shipping company themselves would become the constraint, which they did in the last year. And we had to figure out how to solve that. But yes, we have decided that our overarching constraint is having enough sales. And so our constraint is how many salespeople we have. If we want more sales, then we need to go get more qualified salespeople. And so that's the overall company constraint.
Right.
And then each individual plant has a machine or a process that is the constraint for that plant.
Okay, that's lovely. That's I'm hoping as people kind of listen to that adds a lot of real world clarity to how you do this stuff. And if actually, no, I'll leave that there. I'm wondering, because the connection's gone a little bit funny. It's not that you're not beautiful to look at, Len, but would you mind turning your video off and just maybe we go on audio at the moment? It might make the connection. All your words are coming through. They're just a little bit delayed, thanks to the internet there. I'm just gonna. There's another little bit there that there's a recurring theme at the moment that transportation and shipping and all that kind of stuff is becoming the unexpected constraint for an awful lot of businesses. When Ian Larson was on from WiseTech about a month ago, and I was talking to him beforehand, he was saying that this is actually a huge constraint for a lot of people, a lot of companies around the world, exactly because the big companies, just like you described, are buying all of the capacity to distribute all around the world, and it's leaving a lot of the smaller companies in dire straits. I think a lot of those other ones are going to die, but because they just can't, get stuff out to the customers. But what's really nice is that you've turned that into an opportunity. So I'm just going to go back to another question here. Sorry, it sounded like a management consultant. You've turned that into an opportunity. What you've done is you've taken a lemon and you've turned it into lemonade. And now I sound like a consultant who writes inspirational books. So apologies, everyone. So Craig, hello, Craig. Craig's asked, you mentioned several plants with different constraints. Are the plants actually the same thing, or are they doing different things?
So every plant is doing something different. None of the plants are duplicates. So if you think about a stairway, we need to be able to make wood We need to be able to make a steel structure underneath it. We need to have a stainless steel, possibly hand railing or post. Then we have to have the cable railing componentry, and we may have glass on the stairway. And so each of those different material disciplines is a different facility, different plant.
Right, right. And if you were outsourcing those, if you were buying bits and pieces from a different manufacturer, you wouldn't own the plant, but that would be some supplier elsewhere who hopefully would be, managing it in much the same way, and you just think of them as a supplier and a delivery. Why did you decide to manufacture so much stuff yourself?
Clark, we run on a 10 business day lead time, and to reliably be able to get custom products. So we go from a CAD drawing to a completely custom set of steel tubes that are cut and welded and fabricated, and glass panels that are cut and edged and tempered. And to be able to do that in 10 business days, we just couldn't find a way to get it done without taking control of it ourselves. And so
Right.
we really enjoy having that control, because we also have the visibility to be able to inform the customer if we have something that a piece of glass breaks. Well, we can very quickly solve it.
Yes. So you've kind of gone like for the Henry Ford model of I think where he tried to having control over things that were not controllable was very important to him, and you're finding the same again. Okay, that makes really good sense. So this is just really interesting, and I hope I'm not bouncing off your ideas too much. It's just me sort of getting that in my head. Okay, so I'm just reading through here. Jack he asked the same question about the supplier limitations there. Are you like, if someone came in and said, oh, why don't you do lean? Or do you do lean? Or do you do ToC, or do you do lean and ToC? How do you work with other ideas like that?
So our belief is that TOC tells us where and lean tells us how. And so we are very embracing of lean concepts, and we do lean training. And so we'll around something that is impacting the constraint. What we find, interestingly enough, we don't really do a Kaizen event on the constraint, but we'll do a Kaizen event on something that is impacting the constraint.
Right.
Because if we're going to protect the constraint, it has to get 100% good quality coming to it. And if that's not happening, then we need to do a Kaizen event on the process in front of the constraint. Right. So some people that we will hire and will come to us have a huge background in lean, and they want to get rid of all of my buffers and try to make everything just flow without a buffer. And we butt heads on those things, but for the most part, they work very well together.
Okay, that's good. And as the boss, you can help them.
I can help them along in their understanding.
Okay, yeah. That's really cool. Okay, just see what else we've got here. Ian. I always struggle with your name in your last name. Ian's quite easy. Heptonstall. Ian has asked, which of the ToC applications do your plants and other teams use? Drum buffer rope, critical chain, replenishment? And I'll add on there, do you use the thinking processes? What other parts of ToC do you use? What applications?
So drum buffer rope. We really work around drum buffer rope a considerable amount. Our replenishment models, honestly, we probably grab more of our replenishment models from lean than we do ToC, but we've kind of picked the best, what we think the best is. And then we will also frequently use the thinking process more largely that's been at the senior management level.
Right.
Because the thinking process can get a little tedious if you go through all the steps, but we've certainly used that when something is big and important to do, and at some level the thinking process has implemented its way into everyone's thinking because they stop asking the either or question and they're all really bought into, well, how do I get both, and how do I gather the best of both of these? And so I think it's starting to become a little more of a culture than it is a process.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. How do you get the best out of both worlds?
Which is really what the thinking process is taking us through. It's busting our either or thinking, and it's kind of getting us down to, what's underneath this. Why do we want these things?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I love that. Okay. Critical chain. Do you use critical chain?
Um, no,
No.
not against it. Just it has not been. It's not been. It's not been key in our business development.
Yep. Yep. I can understand that entirely. Okay. That's really cool. Okay. Now I'm just going to talk for a little bit as I figure out what to ask you next. Da, 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 da. Okay, I think we've done pretty well on the questions there. Right, okay, I'm going to ask you now, could you go all wise and Yoda-like for me for a second and take a deep breath and share some wisdom with perhaps the people who are on the screen here who are joining in. And ideally, it would be not repeating what Ali Goldratt said, but building on kind of like the ToC thing. What would you like other people to know about this stuff apart from your competitors?
Oh, trying to compete and trying to be Yoda like's a little challenging. I don't do the accent so good. Uh, but I would say some things that I think that is really important in business is to know the numbers every day, finding out what is the key performance indicator, and getting that down in front of the managers and the supervisors and the people on the floor and the salespeople and the customer service people and everyone knowing what is their KPI. And I try to get the KPI down to two things. When I'm driving a car, I want to know two things: how fast am I going, and how much gas is left in the tank. And um, and if I can get a KPI down to just two numbers for a manufacturing plant, um, I I think I can do really well. And that usually that how fast are we going is how many dollars did we produce today, and what is my backlog. And those are the two numbers that I think a manufacturing plant needs to get their arms around, and understand. And every manufacturing plant's a little different, but I would say really grasping the numbers every single day. And people say, well, it's really hard to do. Yeah, it is hard to do. And so you better start now and like get it done, because if you don't know your numbers every day, you're going to come into the month and probably be a little disappointed with them.
Yes.
And so that's been a really important thing that we've had to get our minds wrapped around. And I think it was a real breakthrough moment for us when we understood this, playing for the peaks rather than playing for the averages, and figuring out how to have enough manufacturing capacity to 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 satisfy our peaks,
Yes.
because that is where we find that a lot of money ends up getting made, is when we have enough capacity when the market surges and we're able to take advantage of it. The market surged in the last 12 months of building materials, and we have been able to maintain our lead time, and we've been able to ride that surge up, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun for us.
That's really good. So I imagine you have another graph that's on the other side of the wall that when you're in your office that you can see when you've got your funnel on the wall behind you and you're looking at it, and it's got a graph and it goes up in a nice upward direction. And that sounds like because you've got a system that you can scale in advance just by looking forward. But the demand side, the top of your funnel, and I'd love to kind of just finish on this quickly. You can fill the top of your funnel quite quickly, provided that you manage that layer below it, which is your sales and design and the admin stuff. So how do you get how does the top of the funnel work? Because that's the bit I think that's kind of that's really most sort of most unusual to me. Not unusual. It's the bit I don't get. So I want to know your secrets, Len. Basically, how do I get rich by building a funnel?
So Clark, I'm going to be 50 this year, and the secret is to hire a bunch of people in their 20s and 30s that really, really know how to do this stuff,
Love
and
it.
step out of the room and don't tell them how to do their job. Just say, make magic happen. Here's a big budget. I'll keep the accountants away from you. You guys go get it done.
Oh, those
And
accountants, they're a pest, aren't they?
they're all, they're a killjoy, aren't they? But I say that sarcastically and tongue in cheek, but we really grabbed a really strong in-house marketing team. We didn't outsource it to a firm. I went and hired some of the most brilliant analytical young minds I could find and said, okay, figure out how to spend money really smartly and measure the lead values coming in and our conversion rates and really maximize all that. And they did an awesome job on it.
That's lovely. I must say, I looked at your website. I hadn't looked at it recently, but I looked at it again yesterday, and it really sells really well. But before they get to your website, you've got to have ads out there that appeal, and that's that front end. So can I just if Google Ads, now I might be simplifying this far too much, but my naive view of this is that provided you've got good ads, you've got a good pitch, you've got appealing stuff that makes people go click, you could just really turn up the spend on that and increase the demand relatively quickly and easily. Is that right? Is it just a matter of spending money?
I want to go back to what you were saying. We have to make sure it's not just about spending more money, but it's also about us really figuring out what is converting and what messages are resonating with the market. Yes. And what products are resonating with the market. Because if we just spend more money to get people to the website, but we don't have the products that they want, well, we haven't really gained anything. Or if when they hit the landing page, they don't see what they want and they bounce. So it is a very holistic approach to looking at this entire thing. Do we have the lead time right? Do we have the pricing right? Do we have the shipping costs right? Do we convince the customer we can ship to their area? Can we respond to their questions in a really rapid time? Because we're selling a custom product, and so they want to interact with us before they drop $20,000 on a stairway. So there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle for us.
Oh, that's lovely. That actually I really like that. The key word probably being holistic, and you can't do that. Yeah. All of the things you've described, your visual management with your funnel, your measures, having your bottlenecks, knowing actually how much your capacity is in each area, and then that magic bit that's just below the top of the funnel where you actually convert the leads into sales, which, as you've said, it's not an easy product. It's not like they're buying a paperback from Amazon. There's a there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in there that's really, that's probably where your magic lies. Okay, now I just want to really just wrap up and just now and ask you just one last question, which is, actually, no, I just realized the question I was asking you might sound like it's biased. Can I ask you what book people you recommend people read? What book that's not by Goldratt or anyone else in the ToC community would you like other people to go take a look at?
Oh man, Clark, you caught me off guard. Um,
Want me to ask a different question?
I'm gonna no, I got it. I got it, but I'm gonna go around the barn here. In the last 5 years, I from 45 to 50 here, I have transitioned from reading kind of the nuts and bolts how-to business books to reading biographies of leaders and really trying to focus on who am I as a leader more than just nuts and bolts. But if I was going to point anybody to a nuts and bolts book, it would be Measure What Matters by John Doerr.
Yep.
That book had a really big impact on our business, and we went deep into Measure What Matters and applying OKRs.
Okay, that's really cool. That's a very, very useful way to end that. Hey, thank you so much, Len. What I'd love is, could everyone in here, could we just pop into grid view? And Len, if you wouldn't mind popping your video just back on for another bit, because the nicest way to end this is if everyone could just do something like this as a thank you. That's really, really, thank you so much for your time. I feel wiser now, Mr. Yoda. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.